Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dudeist Journey. I'm your host, the Reverend Phillip K. And we're going to go on this little journey together today. Now, I usually talk about a particular topic of what's going on, or like I've talked about joy, I've talked about forgiveness, and I was going to go and talk about suffering because it is a part. So today I'm going to take it easy and I'm going to talk about this little fan theory I have about who is the Great Pumpkin. If you live in the United States, you have heard this story. It was by Charles Schulz, way back when. I want to say the 60s. But they created a cartoon show called The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, and the whole story evolves around this kid Linus, who's Charlie Brown's friend, and he believes that there's this magical being, the Great Pumpkin, who on Halloween night goes to the most sincerest pumpkin patch. I don't know what makes a pumpkin patch sincere, but that's the thing. So if you are waiting in the most sincere pumpkin patch, the Great Pumpkin will come to you and bring you presents and gifts and all these things. And so Linus waits out there, and he waits and waits, and Great Pumpkin never comes. Now, a lot of people have always been wondering, because a lot of folks tend to get more and more into the backstory and the origin story of things. So a lot of people are always asking about, like, who is the Great Pumpkin? So I'm gonna adjust the mic real quick. So there's a lot of different theories on this one, and I've got one to throw in, because a lot of people, they tend to say it's like, I'm adjusting the mic here. Most people will tend to say that, like, it's a monster or a demon or Pumpkinhead or something like that from the old horror movies. And so I'm going to throw one out there for you, and I'll tell you who the Great Pumpkin is. It's Lucy. Now, at first, you're probably not going to like that, because Lucy is Linus's older sister, and she's really sort of mean to him throughout the story. So let me give you a recap here on the story, in case you don't know the story of the Great Pumpkin. So Linus is writing to the Great Pumpkin just like a kid writes a letter to Santa Claus, and Charlie Brown debates with him, and Linus actually brings up that point. He's like, well, you believe in Santa, so I believe in the Great Pumpkin, to each his own. Now, Lucy comes over, and she's like, you're writing again to the Great Pumpkin, another year. Everyone's going to make fun of you. You're going to be a laughing stock, and calls him an idiot and all these things, and is really rude to him. And then later on, Linus, on Halloween night, Linus goes out to the pumpkin patch, and he's waiting. Now, Lucy and the kids, they get in their costumes, and they're going to go trick-or-treating. So they stop by the pumpkin patch, and they're like, hey, Linus, you want to come? You're over here being, you're going to just be stupid, da-da-da. And yeah, they mock him a bit. They say some mean things to him. But he's like, no, I'm going to stay. The Great Pumpkin's going to come. And then, so they go trick-or-treating. Linus stays by himself. Now, while they're trick-or-treating, Lucy says, can I have an extra piece of candy for my stupid brother? And she collects extra candy on Linus's behalf. Then the kids are going to go to this Halloween party, Violet's Halloween party. So they're going to go to there. But then before they go, they stop by the pumpkin patch again. They stop by and they ask Linus, do you want to stop this? Do you want to come with us? And he says no. And he convinces, I think, Sally to stay with them at one point. So they go to the party. Linus is still there. No Great Pumpkin. He thinks he sees the Great Pumpkin at one point, but it turns out to be Snoopy, the dog. And after the party, they come again. And they're like, are you going to come home? You've missed Halloween. Everything's over. He still won't leave. Later that night, Lucy wakes up about like 3 in the morning or something. And she goes out, and sure enough, Linus he's asleep in the pumpkin patch. He's all cold and shivering. She picks him up, she takes him home, and she puts him to bed. Now, already you can probably start to gather why I'm calling Lucy the Great Pumpkin. Lucy is the Great Pumpkin as a parent is Santa Claus to their child, okay? It's the spirit, the spirit of the holiday. And so Lucy has been exhibiting this. Now, some will say, well, Lucy's really mean. Yes, she is, because she's been putting up with this for years, okay? How much patience would you have for a person who keeps doing something that's a little bit kind of silly and dumb, and even dare I say even problematic, but it looks bad on everyone because this is her family member. So she is trying to get him to come and do the festivities and do everything with him. And why is that? Notice that throughout this whole story, Lucy keeps trying to get Linus to come and go on their whole Halloween gig. And the reason is because what's Linus waiting for? He's waiting for candy. He's waiting for gifts. He's waiting for prizes, right? Well, had he gone with Lucy, he would have gotten all that stuff. They were passing out toys and candy when they were trick-or-treating. They went to the party and they played games for prizes like Bob for apples and all that stuff. So Linus would have gotten exactly what he wanted had he gone with Lucy and listened to her. And who collects candy on his behalf? Lucy. Who's the one who keeps trying to stop him from waiting all night in the pumpkin patch and missing everything? Lucy. Who's the one that approaches him 3 to 4 times throughout this story to tell him to not do this? Lucy. And who is the one who gets Linus in the middle of the night and brings him home? Lucy. So while some people think that, Lucy is always the bad guy, and don't get me wrong, she's a total narcissist at times. Her character is meant to be that, but the thing that you'll notice in this story is that there's no parents. And the reason for that is because a lot of kids back in the day were what were known as latchkey kids. The parents are at work, they can't be at home, you come home from school, you're on your own. Seriously, that's how it was. Some of them didn't even lock their doors, man. And so Lucy really is the parent in this case because the older sibling would have to take responsibility for the younger ones. I was constantly having to listen to my older brothers because they were the oldest and they were in charge. And so, end of discussion. And then as time went on, I became the older sibling and I had to watch my little brother and sister. And so it's Lucy, you end up taking on a parental type role, even though you're a kid and you don't understand the full complexities of what it is to be a parent. Like, notice Lucy's being very mean to him, but probably because, they grew up in a house where, they got whooped with a belt, like a lot of us older folks did. Some folks still do, but it's, there's a reason why there's that hostility there. She's in charge of this, she's being put in charge of her younger brother, and if her younger brother stays all night out in a pumpkin patch, she gets in trouble. Sadly, that's how it was. So Lucy really is the great pumpkin in all of this. And there's another little hint here. She wears a witch mask. That's her costume, right? Now, some people think, oh, mean evil witch that turns, kids into toads and evil potions and do. But no, actually, if you really know your history, witches were actually just female, shaman, basically. I mean, they knew how to use herbs and things and natural remedies to help heal things, Hey, your stomach hurts? Eat this ginger root and you'll be fine. No, there's not demons in your stomach. We don't have to drill holes in your stomach to get the demons out. No. Just eat this ginger root and you'll be fine. Witch, So witches were actually trying to help people, but they got demonized instead. And in this case, it's kind of the same thing. Everyone thinks that Lucy's being the mean one when actually she's being the nicest and most responsible amongst them. Because think about it, none of the other kids collected candy for Linus. None of the other kids went out and got him in the middle of the night. It was all Lucy. So my fan theory, if anyone ever asks, who is the great pumpkin? It's Lucy. The whole time she takes charge, she takes lead, and she really sort of encompasses the spirit of Halloween. Is she mean and rude? Yes, she's mean and rude. Okay. But if you had to put up with kids, then you would be mean and rude too, especially if they weren't your kids, that you were basically babysitting your younger brother and sister. And I know anyone out there who's got siblings, you were not the kindest to your brother and sister, okay? You had times where you were a total butt, okay? Myself included in that group, all right? Ain't nobody innocent here. And so that right there is my little fan theory for who is the great pumpkin. A fun way to kick off the October season. Because October is a season, not a day. As for myself, man, I'm plowing through. Learning this coding stuff. I'm learning JavaScript a lot right now. I've been learning some C#. So like I know all my web stuff, HTML, CSS. I'm using Node and the Express package in there and all that stuff, trying to build apps because apparently you can take any code now. Basically, I mean, if it's C#, C++, Python, JavaScript, whatever app maker you're using, you can basically convert that language into the app. So, because I thought I would just be learning C# and C++, but they're like, no, it keeps changing, man. Our world keeps changing. You have to think about it, man. If you buy a book on JavaScript, by the time you read that book, it'll be outdated. That's how fast it is. They're coming up with new packages and stuff all the time because JavaScript is a kind of an easier. It's a bit easier to do. Less lines of code, less people to help maintain it. So it's it's becoming a new thing. So now I understand why my teacher. Because I was talking to my teacher. I was like, look, I want to build games. I was told that I could use Unity and I could build games, and so I thought I'd be learning. And they basically run on C#, so I thought I'd be learning C#. But they're like, yeah, no, that's if you want to build games, go build games. But we're trying to teach you guys about what makes apps now versus mobile apps that my certificates in. So they're like, for that development, you need to understand that it's changing. And while you think, at one point, the only language you had to know was C++, or C or C++. Now there's C++. Now there's Python. Now there's JavaScript. Now there's it's huge. It's just keep growing. Like, and that's the thing with me is I thought I'd just be learning one language, and I'm having to learn like 4. And those languages keep growing. It's not just the language. There's all these other things attached to it because you got your language there. And then all of a sudden, someone creates something that goes along with it, and there's another package, and there's an add-on, and there's this download, and then stuff branches off from that, and then you got more, and then all of a sudden, it's like, oh my god, it keeps growing, changing and evolving, like Vue and React. What? I thought that was C#, man. Just thought I'd be learning one thing. But my instructor told me, he's like, look, if you want to make games, go make games. Do it now. The software's out there. The stuff's out there. I mean, I've seen your stuff, so you know what you're doing. So just put what you've got, and then go ahead and just start building your apps. So I'm gonna check out Ep003 and take it from there and see what I can do. Because the thing is that now there's some new programs out there that help you make apps for cheaper. And I know you're thinking, what does this have to do with the Great Pumpkin and the Dudeist journey here? Not much. Because today I'm just going with the flow. I'm just taking it easy, man. This is one of the kind of the lessons that you got to learn in this because well, you may not know, but Dudeism is based on Taoism, and Taoism is the art of peace. It's going with the flow. I think I got a thing here. So what Dudeism is an attempt to remind people that everyone could live together peacefully if people would only be mindful of how their thoughts and actions affect themselves, others, and the earth. You have to. It's not easy to be peaceful because there's a lot of stuff out there that can really tick you off, And so, trying to be peaceful can often be the bigger challenge. Believe it or not, but like when I talk about forgiveness, sometimes that's incredibly hard for people to do. You'd be surprised. I bet there's probably a few folks you can think about right now that you're probably holding a grudge against. It happens, man. We're human, but you got to let it go. And otherwise, you just get stuck in this rut, and it's just got to forgive others. You got to forgive yourself, man. And you got to forgive Lucy for being a butt. Because all she was trying to do was stop her brother from doing something that he's done year after year. And so he's done this multiple times, which means that eventually anyone would get ticked off. It's like, dude, after the first, 2 attempts, don't you think that after that, maybe you should have stopped? If you didn't make the jump the first 2 times, I don't know if you're going to get it on the third. Just saying. This isn't the Matrix. It's not like your powers get better, okay? You're going to get a little more worn out. You're going to get older. You're going to die. It's a ride, man. It's just a ride. And you have to kind of remember that, even though I know it can be very hard to do. Well, folks, I'm going to go ahead and just keep this short tonight. Like I said, this is my little fan theory on who I think the Great Pumpkin is. I'm sure I could probably turn it into a nice YouTube video. But I think the overall point in that story is that the people that you think are that don't have your best interest sometimes actually do. Because if there's someone out there, let's say there's someone out there who's pushing you to succeed or achieve things, you might be like, oh, that person just doesn't love me or respect me or accepts me as I am. It could be that they just see that you've got way more potential and you can do way more than what you're doing right now if you just applied yourself and took some time. Dude, I'm 40 years old and I'm learning how to code, okay? Anything's possible. An old dog can learn new tricks. It just depends on the dog. So on behalf of Dudeist everywhere, I ask you all to have a wonderful, I hope you're all kicking off that wonderful October season. I hope you got a 31 horror movie marathon or something. I know a lot of folks are advertising that now, like Hulu and Netflix and stuff. I got my own set. I just watched Army of Darkness on October 1st. I watched Bram Stoker's Dracula last night. And then tonight, I'm probably going to do Hot Fuzz. I mean, it's technically horror. A lot of death in it, you know. It's comedy, action, horror. Yeah, we'll go with that. So I hope you guys are kicking it off. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're feeling good. And above all, I just hope you're taking it easy. All right, and so before we go, I always like to do a 5 minutes of silence. 5 minutes of silence to help you think, pray, meditate, whatever it is. To reflect upon maybe someone in your life who pushed you, not because they hated you, but because they loved you. Someone who tried to help you when maybe you couldn't see it or maybe understand. So let's start that 5 minutes right now. All right. Hope you're feeling refreshed out there, folks. Hope you're doing all right. Hope you're going to enjoy this October Halloween season. Hope you get lots of candy. But more important above all, I hope you take it easy. Thank y'all. And till next time, man. Good night.